Now, payments of £100,000 will be made to victims of the contaminated blood scandal the government is expected to announce this week. Downing Street says Boris Johnson wants payments recommended by a public inquiry to be made to more than 4,000 survivors as soon as possible. Thousands of people contracted HIV or hepatitis C in the 70s and 80s through NHS treatments, with more than 2,400 people having died as a result. Andy Evans is from Evesham. He contracted hepatitis C and HIV when he was 5 years old. He's chair to the Tainted Blood campaign group. And Colette Wintle from Martley was infected with both hepatitis B and C when she was a teenager and has since developed cirrhosis of the liver. And they join me now. Good evening, both. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening, Tammy. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad, thank you. We can start with you, Andy.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. What's your reaction to this? Is it positive news at last?
It's positive if we look at it what it really is. It's an interim payment that's been recommended by the inquiry. The inquiry is nowhere near finished yet. It's due to report next year. We're expecting that, given this news, that compensation will be a recommendation of the inquiry. So this 100,000 is in lieu of the ultimate, the final payment, if you like. And its intention is to allow people who are, very poorly, end of life, or those who have, had got into lots of debt because of their illnesses, to set their affairs in order in a speedy manner. And so Brian Langstaff of the inquiry was explicit that, nobody should be having to wait until the end of the inquiry and then all of the rigmarole and the red tape that needs to be put behind us before we can get a proper compensation panel going. So this recommendation is an across the board £100,000 to help people immediately, so that for those in particular who won't make it to see the end game and proper compensation, will be able to set their affairs in order.
Sure. And I'm wondering, just listening to that, Andy, what it's been like for you, living with this since you were 5 years old and fighting for recognition and compensation as an adult. It's your whole life.
Yeah, 40 years in the making before we've seen anything that we can call compensation is a long, hard campaign. One of my initial reactions was, thank goodness the wheels are in motion. But you think about the struggle that not just myself, but everybody who's been infected has had to endure, not only coping with their infections, but fighting to get this recognition. In my case, I've had full-blown AIDS as a teenager. I wasn't expected to survive. I've been through the hepatitis C treatment to try to clear that. Obviously, hepatitis B was another factor. New variant CJD all came through these blood products, over those 40 years. So, if you put it into context, it's £2,500 a year of being infected. So it's not a massive amount of money, but as it comes all at once, it may help some people to set things right and hopefully find some security for their loved ones at least.
Yeah, and then they do label it compensation, but as you put it there, across a lifetime and really nothing actually, regardless of even what comes beyond this, could really compensate for what you and other victims have been through.
Well, that's right. I'm one of the lucky ones from the HIV cohort. 80% of those are dead already. I'm one of the fortunate 20% left behind. And as you mentioned in your lead up to this, 2,400 people total have lost their lives, and there's no way that any money obviously can make up for that. All it can do now is to give those who are still alive a more comfortable and secure existence. And hopefully we're hoping that the recommendation will be that for those left behind, widows, parents, bereaved children, that, it will offer them some sort of closure and ability to, fend for themselves as well, because that's really important to us.
I, on behalf of me and anybody else listening to this and hearing your story and recognising now as the chair of the Tainted Blood campaign group, I salute you, man, because I have to say that in this situation, having gone through all of this, you are fighting not just for yourself, but on behalf of so many, and so many perhaps just haven't got that courage or aren't as erudite as you to do that. So,
well, thank you for that.
all
Thank you.
power to you on that.
I have to say that there are many people who came before me. Tainted Blood is by no means the first campaigning group. We've had Birch Grove, Manor House, all sorts of campaign groups that are no longer around because they're, a lot of the reason is because their chairman and their committee have died, unfortunately. But thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Not at all, Andy. We can bring Colette into the conversation here. Hi, Colette.
Hi there, Tammy. Good evening.
Good evening to you. What's your reaction then about this compensation that's going to be coming your way? I know this is an initial payment, but how do you feel about this first move?
Well, I have to say it's not before time. I mean, I personally, as Andy quite rightly said, there were many people like myself who've been fighting for 30 plus years who began the foundation of campaigning out of frustration and anger over the, government after government repeatedly ignoring the plight of, I speak as somebody who belongs to the Hemophilia community. I think the number's actually higher than Andy suggested. There's actually over 3,000 haemophiliacs have lost their lives to this scandal. And yes, as I said, it's not before time because there has been an overwhelming need for many, many years for government to address this and put it right. And as we've heard from evidence given to this inquiry, that it's quite clear that there has been wrongdoing, which government have denied for years. It's quite clear there has been negligence. For many years, myself and campaign colleagues have presented evidence of gross negligence, and that has been ignored. So, yes, I welcome the interim payment being made, and I hope that it's done fairly swiftly. There's certainly the mechanism in place for them to implement it as soon as possible, because the government have a reputation for dragging their feet when it comes to financial recompense. And I have to say, we've never had recompense proper. It's always been measly ex gratia sums of money. And people have been forced into life of poverty. Many people's marriages have broken up. It's been a devastating impact in many, many respects, physically, mentally, psychologically, socially. Family life's been ruined. And in the case of certainly the haemophilia community, and I speak for myself as one who had 5 members of the same family infected with different types of viruses between HIV, Hep B, Hep C. I've been multiply infected, co-infected with hepatitis viruses. I was very lucky. I missed HIV. But the devastation of that has meant that in the years I've been working with BBC Hereford and Worcester with this since 2003, sadly in the last 2 years, as I predicted would happen, I developed liver cancer. Now, fortunately, on this occasion, it was operable. But I have been battling this for years, and I'm coming up for 63 now. It's been a terrible, terrible journey to go through that experience and all that means, and the way it's impacted upon my own family life, and trying to raise a daughter and protect her from all of this has been extremely difficult. But it's also been very hard and exhausting to put yourself out there publicly. Don't forget the stigma, because many people went into hiding. Many people weren't capable of campaigning. And so there were some of us who really just had to, do it because it was the only way we were going to bring any public attention to this scandal.
Well, all I can say, having listened to your story, and I'm sure anyone who listens can't even begin to imagine the life that you've had in fighting this fight. But again, as I said to Andy, I commend your strength. And I look forward, for you to receive the rest of your compensation. It's as again, as I said to Andy, it's not going to compensate truly for what you and others have been through. But at least the acknowledgement after your fight is something. Thank you so much for talking to me, Colette. Thank you so much indeed. All the very best to you and indeed your family as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you.
That was Colette Wintle from Worcestershire, who was infected with both hepatitis B and C when she was a teenager and has since developed cirrhosis of the liver. And Andy Evans from Evesham, he contracted hepatitis C and HIV when he was 5 years old. He's chair to the Tainted Blood campaign group.